Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and all of you out there in the greater role playing community that happen to be part of this show, if you are here live, are the co hosts of this show. They make this show that much greater. Yes, on YouTube, Twitch, even our own Discord server, and even Facebook, you can join in. Morning there, Mufa. What's going on? So, we are going to continue our throwback discussion as suggested by Michael Moldeski, talking about magic, classic magic in Dungeons and Dragons, and we've all had our armchair discussions about how, on the surface, when creating characters and adventuring in Dungeons and Dragons, on a very personal level, but a band of a motley crew of adventurers, it's not really a big deal. But when you take a look at how magic is used in the general, I'm going to say very stereotypical Dungeons and Dragons setting, that magic seems to, or would most likely, transform society. And yesterday we talked about the fact that it might not be that easy. I suppose if you took a look at magic on a longer time scale, of course magic would change society. But in the time scales in which in which we're talking about, hey there, Mike. Um, it's your day off. Ooh, well, happy anniversary there. Okay. Glad I could be a distraction as you then recoup yourself and engage in your very important adventure today. What's up, Z? Like, nice. All right, now yesterday, one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of on the channel is creating drama. We all know, if we have discussions about firearms and gunpowder, everyone automatically goes from mixing explosives to AK-47s, and when it comes to magic, that we automatically jump to the conclusion of, well, if there's fireballs, we would just have armies with fireballs, and they would dominate. And I think there's story in there, given the short time span that normally we have with player characters, which is only usually a few years. Very, very rarely do we see tables where characters go through a millennium of time or multiple generations. It happens, but I don't think it happens as often as we think. So today we're going to talk about law enforcement and a little bit of fire as well. Engaging in magic, because today is Thursday, and it is Third Pillar Thursday, third pillar of exploration Thursday, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But let's discuss some nuance that we can create when it comes to law enforcement and magic. Now, one of the issues with Fifth Edition and most magic systems in general, in role playing games, is that there's a lot of activation. There's a lot of on buttons. Player characters have access to magic that allows them to do a thing. There usually isn't an equal and opposite number of things to prevent players from engaging in magic. For example, we have ourselves a laundry list of cantrips that players can do pretty much willy-nilly. But the reverse of that, the thing that prevents magic from happening in the first place, is very few. We have ourselves counter spell, very high level magic. We have anti magic, which is even higher, and we do have dispel magic. All of those spell capabilities, if you want to talk about a ratio of people who have the ability to use those, meaning like cantrips would be far more abundant based on your setting than, say, fifth level spells. The higher level the spell ability, the more rare it becomes because of the people who have the capability of using it and then using it in a wide fashion, right? Oh, Dead Man says in second edition AD&D, a spell needed 1d6 plus spell level pages to record it in a specially prepared spell book that costs 20 to 100 gold per page. Dead Man is pointing out the fact that a small, a very small percentage of players and dungeon masters are adamant about making sure that players spend the money and the time, the resources, and even the page count for their spell books in order to write those spells in them. So yeah, that man's like, you know that you get a fifth level spell, that means it's between 6 and 11 pages in your spell book. Who's doing that, and who would give that out, right? Archive says, anyone ever required mages in their game to have licenses in order to freely cast spells or certain schools of magic in the society they are operating in? That's exactly where you already on the same page there, but my friend, already on the same page. Yeah. Mike says, when I first started running Thole, I wanted to keep the players low key. I wanted them to learn to use their wits. I wanted to run a gritty world where actions had repercussions and where politics were plausible. There wasn't a king every 10 miles. And to that end, they started in a region where magic was heavily regulated. So let's, and I'm going to pop your comment up here, Archive. Like, of course, one thing about rules is we also, if it's just a verbal agreement, we, like, for example, in our modern society, we have stop signs and street lights, and we have an agreement on social interactions when it involves the law. We can go into supermarkets and corner stores and restaurants, and we are assumed by law, by the laws written and our own agreement in society, to not steal things, even though they are sitting on shelves. We pay for them and we go about our business. Now, yeah, Mufa. Like, right. Would there, do you have a concealed carry license for that wand? As sarcastic as it is, maybe there is, right? Okay, so when it comes to licensing, first we have the above board agreement. Is there a portion of the society that's organized enough to say, hey, listen, enchantment magic, a specific school of magic? Yeah, we don't use illusion and enchantment magic in a city. It's the act of doing it is illegal no matter what your reasoning is for doing the thing, right? So maybe like firearms, like drugs, certain things. We have people that are licensed to practice medicine and I don't know, affect body and hair. We have licenses for people go to school to learn how to fix cars and do HVAC systems and things. And so maybe it is regulated. Hey, you're some unknown wizard cast or something. Hey, you need to go to, or maybe you're confronted at the city state walls, and someone looks you up and down and is like, yeah, you need to register. Now, how that registration happens? Do you pay for it? Do you do you wear a headband or an amulet or a necklace or something? Are you marked with a glyph of some sort? And then how is that done? And I think there's plenty of really cool ways we can do things, right? Like maybe when you walk inside and there are, I don't know, blind seers that can detect magic, and that's all they do, and they look you up and down, and then in return you wear they give you a small bracelet, and whenever you cast magic, it alerts the authorities or causes pain or disrupts your spell or whatever the case may be. And I think there's lots of nuance where we could play with that, from something as simple as, you pass me 100 extra gold, I'll fake the armband, and it really, it'll let you do whatever you want. Or it might alert a particular, maybe there are hunters that roam around the city, blind displacer beasts with black blackguard soldiers or something that walk around, and your average citizen is just like, "Hey, how you doing?" handing out pastries to the town guard, but those guards like go down alleys and climb over rooftops and go down into sewer systems looking for those errant spellcasters or sorcerers or something like that. Going into our co-host here, Mike Gould says wizards had to be registered with the Empire. Sorcerers and warlocks were outlawed and were hunted. Those whom were captured were sent for re-education. Ooh, what does that look like? Yeah, like what are you doing to me? Oh, we're just going to extricate the Vancia magic from your brain, and they're like, with a needle up my nose. Oh yeah, those spells are literally imprinted on your brain. Oh man. Mike goes on to say weapons in town required freebooter permits and had to be peace bound in town. Yeah, peace bonded in town. Yeah, peace bonding might be a thing where your weapons are like a sword is in a sheath and then it's wrapped with and knotted by maybe like a cord or something, or colored cord. Maybe the color has a particular represents a particular status of yourself visiting the town, and of course you may have, you know, gold or favors or something like that, that maybe you could just pull the knot and it actually comes loose real quick, you know. Archive says no illusion or enchantment. Pathfinder 2 bard starts sweating heavily. And oh, don't forget your oh uh trickster rogue. What's the arcane trickster as well? As like, damn it, I can't do anything. Right? Yeah, I mean, you go into a small store and maybe there's bells or something that go off, or colored orbs scattered around the city that that glow when someone is attempting to cast some kind of magic, or maybe there's a sound or whatnot, or animals that can detect it or whatever. Like, I think there are ways to make it problematic for players and for a large modern society. And when I say modern, I mean in a fantasy realm, a society that uses magic, like rich people walking around with floating discs with all their purchased goods on it or something like that, and making it difficult for players to do their magic. But the difficulty is the adventure, right? Like, okay, guys, we need to do a heist, but the minute we start using magic, they're going to detect our magic. So we need to finagle a way around it, right? And I think there's stories in there. Um, Mike Gould says there was a massive black market for fake licenses for outlawed sorcerers and warlocks. Oh yeah, black marketeers would be awesome, and also they probably have their own security as well, right? Like, oh, this license will allow you to cast magic, but the license also maybe records or sends a signal or something like that back to the black marketeers, who then are keeping track of what you're doing behind the scenes, and so on. It could be many. This could be very layered, like an episode of Leverage or something. Zamara says in Matt Koval, I think world mages have to tattoo their spells on their skin. The more they know, the more obvious that they are a mage. Yes, and as a matter of fact, there's even within Dungeons and Dragons, we already have elements that we have things that already can be policed. Uh, Magical components are a thing. So material components could be confiscated or sensed. I mean, think about all the smelly bat guano mages have balled up in their pockets when they're just like, yeah, if you've got bat guano in your pocket, you're definitely got a fire spell, right? A fireball spell, or whatever the case might be. Diamonds and pearls and all, whatever. Maybe there are people who search your pockets or can smell those things or confiscate those things. For example, a black marketeer might sell spell components in dark alleys to spell casters because it's outlawed in the city itself. We do that in our own modern society. And then we have verbal and somatic components. So, for example, people might rat out, they might snitch on those who hear the words or see the physical manifestation of magic, even though they don't understand it. I don't know what Russian is, but if somebody asked me, oh, the person that committed that crime, were they speaking with Russian accent? And I might be 30% correct. right? That might happen as well. Like, oh, a commoner might say, "Yeah, I don't know what spell they cast, but I know they cast a spell, and I'm alerting the authorities." Mike says, "Sure enough, the first PC rolled was no joke, a tiefling wild mage ex stripper." Yeah, I remember you saying that. Subtle, very subtle. Okay. Oh man. Um, Tiefling wild strip. Sounds OnlyFans. Anyway, Zamara says, in my game, those who do magic, divine or otherwise, are not trusted at all, unless they are of elf blood, giving the visual indicator of elf ears, or attached to the divine that people know. So, and I like how you specifically said that, like giving the visual indicator of elf ears, because someone might have elfin ears through alter self or illusion, or someone might be an elf without magic, but they might be assumed to be a part of this arcane society, right? And then, of course, we do have differences between in-world differences, possibly between wizardry and that kind of magic and divine magic as well. Like, for example, wizardry could be completely outlawed, and divine magic might be embraced, depending on the culture, or the other way around, depending on how brutal the gods are to the people. And they're like, yeah, we need wizards to go about this. And also, some other problematic thing is that player characters have player class options and even racial options that don't, by the rules, do not mimic spells, but could be considered spell effects. Paladin smiting, bardic inspiration, so on and so forth. You guys tell me how you handle it in a world like if a paladin's smite is literally them, I don't know, putting radiance into their blade. Do like and there's a place where the gods are cast out by the people. Would a paladin still be able to use that if a cleric can't use their abilities? I don't know. That's up to you guys. Mike Gould says law enforcement was generally done by imperial soldiers, but if there was a real threat, a face would be summoned. A face is a paladin who wears an androgynous silver mask and who loses their last name. Like a nameless figure. Yeah, one might be called Face Tybalt or Evelyn or something dramatic like Face Tyrannus. I love that, and I love the idea of like what a great because you just did an example of something I was thinking about where maybe there are commoners, not statistically, right? Metagaming commoners who take on the mantle of a enforcer so that they become much better than themselves or greater than themselves because of their role as a arcane enforcer, so that you can layer over top of them a different stat block, right? They can use an ogre. In your game, you use an ogre stat block because in their normal lives, they're commoners, but they put the mask on or they wear the accoutrement, right? They put the armor on or they carry a staff or something, or they've blinded themselves, or there's the Council of Seven. I always like to bring up some random Council of Seven that inhabits the minds and bodies of these people to patrol the streets or something, and then they then can use CR8 monster stats because those are the people that patrol the cities and sniff out errant, loose arcane casters. And we have other things as well, like invest with law enforcement. There's investigation. So if someone casts a friend's spell or charm person or command on someone, does it leave a residue in that person's brain? What if they cast magic missile or burning hands or chill touch? Would detect magic detect it a minute, an hour, a day later? And then would it reveal like arcane symbols of the person who did it, or arcane symbols of the type of magic that was used, right? Maybe someone can detect like the steps of a caster appear to glow on the ground everywhere they walk for the past hour. And the PCs are like, shit, damn it, I walked through that alleyway. They're going to find me or something, right? Or someone is mind controlled to do something. Maybe law enforcement is able to find out that they're really innocent when they were told to, given a command. The city guard is charmed. PCs get past the city guard. later on, that city guard is analyzed, and an investigator is like, someone affected your brain, and they're in the city. And then they look for the same details of that player character, right? Because they've affected the weave in such a manner. Mike Gould says if a face came into town, the masked individuals, a local prefect might lose control of their territory to said face as long as one stays. So calling one is rare. Ooh. Yeah, Mufa. Yeah, CSI Arcane division. Hell yeah. Someone. I just imagine like you got the person kneeling down, crouching down with a staff or something, and they've got the 2-finger touch on the ground, and then like a holographic image appears, recalling what happened at that particular location, and then they start questioning individuals. Maybe in Mike's particular. With the faceless manner, maybe they can recruit random individuals or volunteers to become part of their group. Like a face shows up, has 3 amulets. They get three individuals come up to them as volunteers. They go to the small town mayor, and the mayor's like, okay, I'll ask for volunteers. They show up, and then the face puts the amulets over their necks, and all of a sudden they become, CR11 enforcers temporarily before they go back to their normal lives. Like that'd be awesome. Just walking around with like small little devices with pocket monsters, pocket enforcers. I don't know. They're like, I no longer use my replacement gnome and pocket halflings any longer. This is important work. Mike says, speaking of calling, Imperial Communications was done by Homing Pigeon. Ooh, and there's a lot of magic that I wonder, because we'll get into the third pillarism of this kind of stuff, but commonality of magic, I'm not saying that it should be, but I wonder how many non-combat utility spells would be used by commoners, and into what regard, right? Like telepathic and instant communication along long distances, or individuals who are messengers who are given a message in their head. They don't know what the message is, and then they travel a long distance, and then when they get to the other end, they're given a code to repeat that message back that was magically encoded in their brain, and they speak it back in the exact same tone or something to the other person. Or like, how much would it cost to use a teleport disc? Maybe it's like going to a train station or airport or something. Or again, those rich people using floating discs, and maybe there's a special community of people who are like magical servitors that do things like they use prestidigitation around rich people to make them smell good and let the air be fresh, and they use floating discs to carry the things that they've purchased. Or there are security guards that are hired. I love displacer beasts that are used to move the lower folk out of their way and use them as guardians for these rich people that come to the city. Ogres being pushing the lower folk out the way so that the the nobles or rich merchants or something could move around. Mike says player actions lead to massive wild magic zones. Okay, warping local flora, fauna, physics, etc. Pieces of those zones might break off to create wild storms or spreading effects. We talked about yesterday about spells going out of control. Like, hey, I cast a fireball, but you just left an aperture to the plane of fire left behind, whatnot, and a small ember of flame starts to grow into something big, and then maybe takes out the local wildlife or something, and starts burning the forest down because you thought it would be cool to throw a fireball in the woods, or a city town or something, the city state or something. My Dead Man says Shadowrun had a magical division of the police force in nearly every city. Makes a lot of sense. I think so. Makes a lot of sense. I love side effects for magic as well. Let's see here. Mike goes on to say one such wildstorm hit Stavros, okay, capital of the Duchy of Verbilt. This turned 50% of the resident gnome population into goblins. Ow! Reintroducing this species to Thul. Yeah. You could get blamed. Player characters could get blamed for crimes that other people did, because they're magical as well. That's some great storylines where PCs come into town and completely innocent. They go, "Hey, what's going on, everybody?" And then the police are like, "Yeah, there are doppelgangers and shapeshifters. The Lycans are in town. We've got to hunt them down. You're a mage. You did it, didn't you?" And you're like, "What? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a pyromancer." "Yeah, you say that now." Right. Mike says, this raised questions of identity. If mom is a goblin now, is she still mom? That depends on who you ask. Ooh. Or how much relationship with the goblins and gnomes have together there, since they would probably be blood related. All right, Z. Zamara says, the way I handle it, if it has a physical effect, either in the process of casting or the spell effect, people will assume it's magic. Okay. You can get hunted as a witch or a dark mage. Yet for doing mundane card tricks, if it's not obvious enough. I can definitely agree with that. One of my players ended up having swords nearly drawn on him for a non-magic coin trick. Yeah. People make assumptions about lots of things. I love to play with that. While telling us, oh, I'm sorry. The continuation of that comment was, one of my players ended up having swords nearly drawn on him for a non-magic coin trick while telling a story. The only thing that stayed the people's hand was the fact that he revealed his ears. That's awesome. That's all. Yeah, Salem witch trials, right? Someone could be accused of certain kinds of magic. But as a matter of fact, even like Salem witch trialism of people being paranoid, there could be just a normal environmental hazard like droughts, famine, pestilence could be blamed on wizards and wizardry. Of course, like I said, like shape changers, lycanthropes, doppelgangers infiltrating a city, people who enchant minds and illusions could cause paranoia in a city for them to establish these kind of rules. So yeah, absolutely. And also, we don't have to necessarily go directly to anti-magic. Maybe there's disadvantage, like we could use mechanical elements, disadvantage on magic, the alerting of magic. Maybe there are glyphs around the city, those teleportation circles, zones of truth, anti-magic zones might be specified within the city that existed before the city was built, or might be so ancient that the people know it exists, but nobody in town ever did it. It just happens to be a major town that is 3,000 years old, and everyone conducts business like maybe the local bazaar or fair, where goods and services are exchanged, is in an anti-magic zone on purpose. As a matter of fact, one of the great comments that I saw on the feed was, could you imagine an Arcane SWAT team and they throw like flashbangs and anti-magic magic grenades around corners and like break in the places to go after wizards, and the wizards are getting ready to cast a fireball, and the SWAT team is like, get down, get the fuck down. And it was just like, nothing happened. Oh my God. And it got like the crossbow bolts on, and they're all like dressed in black with their faces covered and everything like that. You know, errant sorcerers and wizards and warlocks trying to like jump through windows and run down back alleys as they trip and fall and get arrested and whatnot because they've thrown like the anti-magic cuffs on them or something. I think that'd be awesome. I think I don't know, something about that just to me just gives me great story ideas. So and the visual image of magic SWAT team taking down wizards just seems really cool to me. And it might not even be player focused if they're going after, I love my classic go-to monsters like Naga or Rakshasa or Whites or Sphinxes or Hags or something like that, Blood Hunters, Witch Hunters or something. Let's see, here we go. Mike says, Verbilt was a duchy run by the mercantile dukes, so a full regular army didn't exist. They relied on an alliance with the dwarven region of Barjadan, okay, or Barhodan. Could be. I know I'm butchering the names of your region. Relax. Dwarven soldiers did not take well to new goblins. Ooh, we, culturally, this might be a thing as well. Maybe there are certain cultures, I cultures or regions that are better at doing a thing than other regions, right? Like maybe the Southerners are just naturally more like oracles and seers. They can sniff out magics. And so they're always hired to do a thing. And so when you see someone come in and their like eyes are masked and they're from the southern regions, everyone's like, ooh, uh-oh. That means they're, like that could be a telltale sign for the players. Like, you better watch yourselves because there's hunters here and they're on patrol or they're hired to increase security for a particular place. Or maybe they are what would be considered like the forward group before someone important dignitaries arrive, and they're there to clear out the area to make sure that they don't get assassinated or something. Zamara says there's also the time one of the players noted someone using magic, a boom blade, to save their life. They had to swear to keep their secret in order to stay alive. Yeah. Could you imagine a paladin having to draws their sword, smites something in the city, and then the paladin is held for trial for abuse of magics? And the paladin's like, "What are you talking about? Like, there were monsters attacking." They're like, "Yeah, but you used illegal, you tapped upon the illegal weave, and we don't do that in the city. You have to answer for it." And the paladin's like, "Oh shit, I do abide by the law. I didn't realize that. Man, what's going to happen to me?" Right? Oh man. Archive says this wild magic and wildstorms idea can help to explain why there are not massive army contingents of mages. Yep, lots of cast magic concentrated in one area can just devastate your own side. Yeah, listen, um, visually, I love the idea of like an army of mages casting spells, but that makes a perfect example of why you wouldn't do a thing. It's kind of the reason why everyone just doesn't use nukes even though they exist, because literally one country in our world could send all their nukes and devastate another country. That would mean the death of everybody. The United States could nuke Russia and that whole sphere of the world, possibly before they ever got a weapon in the air. Yay, we won! Till the winds shift and all the radiation comes sweeping around the world and kills all life on the planet, right? Like, sure, someone might have evil lich might have the idea of having an army of wizards when everyone goes, you can go ahead and try, but by that third fireball that you fire, yeah, that wild magic might just devastate your own region. And then the lich 1,000 years later is like, this was stupid. Fold arms, pout. I'm going to make magic lips so that I can pout. Yeah. Also, who are? I said we would talk about fire, police, and fire. Maybe there are firemen, fire peoples, the people going around taking out and disrupting wild magic that exists because of the problems that other spellcasters created in the first place, right? Like, I don't know necessarily whether they would have fire hoses, although it would be kind of cool to see a foam spewing out from hoses from like gnomish and elven arcane. I don't know what you like hazmat suits and having to take the wild magic and close the apertures away because that's what you have to do because so many spells and spell effects have gotten wild and whatnot. Oh man, that'd be cool. Mike Gould says I love the idea of a rogue arcane trickster proving he can still do magic to a beholder by being a master of card and coin tricks. Oh no, confusing and engaging the beholder as it wonders how this can be. Yes, the eye of a beholder is anti-magic, right? Is that cone of anti-magic when they open their eye and the arcane trickster's like, but I am so powerful. Watch the hands. And it, like doing like the rogue arcane trickster's like, okay, what did David Blaine do in that episode? Oh, that's right. I stick a rod right through my arm. See what happened? let me drink this water, and then I'm going to drink the oil. I cast fire. I put it out. The beholder's like, what? Do that again. Huh? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Mm-mm-mm. That would be hilarious. Matter of fact, what if the beholder is just like, you know what? Their eyes are like giving the slow clap, like, sweet. I was gonna kill your ass, but you know what? I'm gonna let you go just because I'm just like impressed. Mike says faces would use hold person, silence, and so on. Yeah, there's a lot of spells like silence, hold person, command, sanctuary. Maybe those kind of things are more commonplace than a little bit, like going to a restaurant and you have important information to talk to someone. And when you get there, there's a small silver half dome, and when you lift it up, there's a small gem in the middle, and it casts silence in a band where you can talk on the inside, but it's silent everywhere else. Or those SWAT team members throw in a silence grenade, and everyone's just like, I can't hear what I can't hear you. And then they start blasting everybody with their with like throwing nets and shooting crossbows and whatnot. I don't know what the SWAT equivalent in Magic would be, but whatever. Mm-mm-mm. Uh, okay, you guys are about to talk. Mike says, my opinions on magic and plausibility are also the reason dragons and giants are really, really rare. I was listening to something the other day talking about someone had a question with a panel and said, if all the monsters exist in D&D everywhere, how would that look? And they were making the comment like, well, maybe it's not what you think it is, that there aren't 5,000 dragons and there aren't 2 million giants and 80 billion kobolds and all stacked on top of each other. It's regional and population divergent and all that kind of business. But okay, going into the fire part of getting slightly away from the law enforcement is that, like, I've always thought that because I love exploration and the environment, that yeah, how would it look? Yeah, apocalyptic. Yeah, it sure would. Yeah, there's maybe in your game world there's like 8 dragons, 8 ancient dragons. That's it. I I I would have zero problem if someone said, yeah, there's only one ancient dragon of each dragon type. And sure, there might be maybe 3 or 4 times that many of each of the other dragon types of various ages, but there's like only one ancient. And I go, all right, okay. There's one ancient dragon. Great. I hope I never meet him. Right? Like, no one says that there has to be 50,000 ancient red dragons. There could just be one. And if you kill that one, another one's age increases to ancient dragon. Maybe not now. Maybe in 5 minutes. Who knows? But hard shift over into exploration. While we talk about magic, there are a ton of ways we can have something happen in our environment when it comes to unregulated magic, simply because we can just literally go to the spell book, go to our spells, turn to the page, pick a bunch of spells, and literally drop them into our world. Whether you want to make them static or random or moving or escalating effects. You guys know I use those kind of terminologies. What do I mean by that? Well, let's go with the simplest explanation, which would be druidic magic. Yeah. Oh, dead man. Seriously? Oh. You guys are always ahead of me. All right, co-host. All right, like Dead Man says, like how druids in second edition worked? Yes. Nearly, in my perception of how things work, nearly every spell that druids cast is a real thing in the world that is not magic. So when a druid casts call lightning and lightning strikes down from the sky, that's like a real lightning bolt coming down from the sky to strike something. When a druid casts, gust of wind, I know other spellcasters can cast a gust of wind. That's a real gust of wind. So in our world, our game worlds, we can do that. You can have a valley that is constantly windy where there's a gust of wind. I live near I live near Tennessee, and they're the Smoky Mountains. They're called the Smoky Mountains because nearly every day you wake up and down in these off the mountains and down in the valleys, it gets foggy. Maybe that's fog because there's a spell called fog. So, and these things could be non-magical and just be natural events. They maybe there's a region that was affected by druids for a millennia of creating fog and wind and other events or whatever, and maybe it is magical, but it's permanent and it happens over not just 30 feet or a cube or a cone. Maybe it happens over miles of region, like the classic jungle in, you know, in a domed area in the Arctic Circle or something like that. And the PCs get there and they're like, well, you know, it's falling down a crevice into the, you know, the center of the earth, and you're in a hollow world where it's different. So it could be magical as well, but also natural, that it's happening not because someone's casting it, but because it had been cast. You know, hell, you could go through a blasted landscape where random fireballs shoot up out the ground and gouts of flame and poisonous gases and things. Cinematic environments. Anyone on drive through RPG? Take, you know, look for Critical Hit Publishing. You might find DBJ on a couple of titles. Plug. Anyway, Mike Gould says in a region the size of Europe and North Africa, there are a total of 4 dragons of adult age or older in Thule. Yeah, yeah. We don't. For some strange reason, we as role players think that there's limitations on things. Like, let me give you an example. Maybe your world isn't a globe. Maybe the map of your world is just a flat plane. And every time you add onto your world, PCs sail somewhere or fly somewhere. Maybe it's just a flat plane that's infinite and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. No one says your world has to be a globe that has, and if it is a globe, how big is it? Why does it have to be Earth-sized? There's no reason something has to be Earth-sized. And we've got, well, are we at 8, 6? We're like at 8, 9 billion people or something. We could probably fit, from what I understand, we could probably fit 1 trillion people on our world as it is and still have space. We have a ton of empty space, not including the oceans. Why aren't things living there? And then you start stacking things, right? Underdark, things floating in clouds, other dimensions. So yeah, there's so many places to stick stuff, stick monsters and where they live, you know. A lot of monsters and mythological creatures are culturally and environmentally based. So something in the desert you might not find that in the Arctic. Which, coming back to our policing magic and such, maybe there are investigators and people shutting down these random strange magics that are sweeping through the world. Like, again, wild magic happening. Like, wild magic could be random things happening in a specific location. Like, there's a gout of flame and then it turns into a bolt of electricity and then it turns into a psychic resonance or something. Or that wild magic could be, oh, there's a random ball of fire that is growing and it's just sweeping through a region and the PCs have to stop it or avoid it or get out of the way of it. Maybe there is a city state that takes advantage of it, where there's certain magics that happen within the city that people aren't spellcasters, but they have the ability to access the magic to use on their own. So, for example, the city guard is connected psychically so they can speak to each other's brains because of something that's given to them. And you could have a reasoning like the Council of Seven gave them amulets, or they, you know, once a day, if they concentrate in this one region, that they get certain magical abilities to be able to change their shape or fly through the air, or they have certain defensive capabilities or something like that. And I feel like as long as you make your world make sense, I don't have a problem with it at all. And I don't think your players would, as long as you as the setting creator say, hey, listen, you see the emblem or the banners flying from the city state that says that this place is anti-magic. You know this up front when you go into town. Here are the issues that you're going to have, and the players are like, oh, okay, all right. And we have to do a heist. How are we going to do that? Michael says, getting back to magic and the law, there are some spells that have sketchy inferences. Yeah, detect thoughts comes to mind. Proving and regulating the privacy of your mind is tricky. Yes, there could be. You could have people wearing devices that activate if someone interferes with their mind, something that glows. They wear the amulet, and if it starts to glow, someone is affecting their mind. Maybe law enforcement has a thing that they can hold up to someone's face or brain or their head, a rod or a gem or something that gives off a message or an alarm or something that says, yes, someone has infiltrated your brain. Or people come into town and a periapt or a fob or something is draped over their wrist to make it difficult to detect someone's thoughts. So when a player character is specializing in that and they go, damn it, everybody's mind protected here. Damn it. Or it could set off an alarm of some sort. Boop, 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 boop. And everyone looks around when the gems start glowing on the little rods, the towers, like light posts or something. Like who's the person affecting someone's brain? It could be draconian law. There are proctors running around detecting impure thoughts or something as well, right? Zamar says miles of desert. The reason why that area is like that is because of a war that included dragons and elves on the opposite sides. Ooh, a dragon ancestry demigod, past 10th level in my game, fought in that war and lost his lover and lost it. Ooh, he used all his power to scorch earth and was nearly put down by all factions to the point where the area became a magic void. Ooh, I like that. While the area is recovering, and the demigod, now a war hero, founded a small settlement, Kara's Vale. You said you want to get back to that. Yeah, that area will never be the same as even the dirt refuses to live. See, I like stuff like that because, wait, is this a continuation of your comment? And though it isn't known, that wasn't the only time that magic changed the face of the world. But for it to happen, it takes powerful magics to begin with. And an area scorched free by magic might be a very interesting place for the players to game, especially like if you wanted to insert this in a small way. Like it doesn't need to be a circle, it could be a scar across the world, and literally like plants grow and like literally just like cut off, and it's not even desert, it's like dust, like the like dark sun, right? It's more dusts and fines and gray and lifeless or something. And PCs are like, I cast a bless spell on PCs. All right, and you walk across and it's done, and you're like, what the hell just happened? And maybe the players have to make a 3-day trek across it, knowing they don't have their healing spells and things like that. And then you could make the distinction between is if, how, and when is divine magic used and not used in conjunction with wizardry style of magic? Like, could a paladin draw their sword and smite something? Is bardic inspiration, does it have an arcane bent to it, or is bardic inspiration more narrative? Like, hey, my bard is a is more of a like a buddy cop, and I love to support my friends, and it just happens to be these just happen to be words that I say to encourage my friends to be better than who they are or something, right? Like, or is it literally magic that is enhancing them? I don't know, you'd have to decide that on your own, but that would be interesting. Mike says charm spells like dominate, suggestion, if caught, these might be punished by death. Yes, we also know that that kind of similar to what Zamar is saying, that in a world where we know these things can be abused, being able to do the thing might be a perfect accusation and guilt that you will do a thing, right? Like, there's a reason why the police will, um, like, if you're wearing body armor, Kevlar bulletproof body armor that literally does no harm to somebody else, the police will probably want to ask you about that, because why are you expecting to be shot? Now, you, of course, could say, I'm a free, especially here in the States, I'm a free citizen. Nobody should tell me whether I could wear a bulletproof vest. And the police are like, yeah, you have the right to buy one and wear one on a daily basis. We need to know why you think you need to wear it in the first place. Why are bullets going in your direction? You're like, well, I just want to be safe. You're like, no, I think it's a little deeper than that, right? And again, like here in the States, we have concealed and open carry laws, right? And some places you could put up a gun in the back window of your pickup truck and nobody flinches an eye. But you get into a high population city and you have your gun out in the open, the authorities are definitely going to be like, why do you need that? And in the fantasy world, you're like, well, I carry my sword and my dagger and my battle axe on my back because I fight dangerous things. And in the city, they're like, yeah, why? You look like you're ready for a fight. Magic would be the exact same way. Oh, Backwana, why do you need that? Well, I'm a wizard and I carry my spell components. Yeah, but why do you need that? Because it's for a spell. And they're like, well, are you going to use it in town? You're like, well, no. Well, we don't believe you. We think you're going to burn the town down, and that's dangerous. Come with us, please. Now, okay, so there. I didn't use this terminology because we're at the end, but you can use certain terminologies when it comes to magical law enforcement. I call them the T's because I don't have any other way to describe them. When I say tease, I don't mean TEASE, like teasing someone, like a feather on the nose. What I mean is, or being scantily clad in front of someone who is attracted to you. What I mean by tease are like trip, track, trace. Like you could have mechanisms. The players could investigate what those mechanisms are, but are there things that that trigger an event? So, for example, casting a spell that affects someone's mind could trigger an alarm, or triangulation, or someone could trace who did the thing. Like if a character uses dominate, charm person, friends, suggestion, maybe that same spell effect could be traced back to the person who did it. Like a calling card. It is a magical glyph that appears in the brains of every single time you do it, the exact same thing. They may not know you, but they know who did it. Oh, there's one person who's mind controlling these people in town. Okay, we know who's doing this. Yeah, right. Or it might be there might be some kind of backlash in the city where there are these long poles with orbs on them, and if you cast a spell, a backlash effect happens on you. And so every time you do it, or maybe there's a drain effect where there's something in the city, or there are enforcers, or whatever the case might be, that whenever you cast a spell, you could see like the arcane magic leaking out of your body or your hands or something. The visual image of spewing out of the ears and nose and mouth and eyes as it gets drained into another thing to power something else, or it might be like a void or something of that nature, right? Anyway, you guys get the point. But Zia. I like arcane scars across the landscape. M Squared, what's going on there? Says, getting flashbacks to a werewolf game I used to play with Americans. I love werewolf. It seemed bizarre to me that it was illegal in some states to buy Kevlar, but legal to buy rifles. You think it's bizarre? We call it America. We could have a whole discussion of openly buying firearms in like Walmart and places like that. Um, he we used to have a place over. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and on the west side there was a small mall that was going downhill, but at a certain time, there was a gun show every weekend. And you could go there and buy, used firearms and swords and knives and and guns and everything like that. Yeah. M Square says, but these sorts of UK American regional differences could easily be reflected in the fantasy setting. Oh yeah. Uh, well, just open and concealed carry laws are a thing, right? Like the fact that you've got a battle axe and a longsword on itself could just draw too much attention to you. Like, why do you need that in our safe city? And or it's just a safety thing, right? Not having open flames in cities makes sense in a fantasy setting where in order to put the fire out, you need bucket brigades. Don't let fires happen in a place that's made out of wood. So sure, you might say, well, I'm just snap my fingers and create fire in my hand. Everyone else is looking around like, yeah, we had a fire 16 years ago that burned the whole city down. We're not going through that again, right? So little things like that would be a thing. Michael says, I can see component pouches in arcane foci treated like weapons. Yes, component pouches. And listen, in even in our own regular dealing in society, we do things like this commonly. Let me give you an example. No cell phones. I've been to in California. We went to the taping of a television show. You can get regular people can get in line and get on a television show. And my wife and I and sister-in-law, we went to the taping of a television show. We were actually in the crowd and whatnot. And when you went in, they confiscated your cell phone. Now, when I say confiscate, they weren't beating you over the head, but there was a big signs and rules. And they said, hey, so you took your cell phone, you stuck it in a thing, you got a tag. And when you left, you got your cell phone back. It wasn't like, we're gonna search your body and you better give it up. It was just like, hey, you want to go inside? And we said, sure. Well, that's what we want to do. And okay, we'll take your cell phone, turn it off, put it in the thing. We lock it up. Here's your key. Go ahead. When you come back, you unlock and get your cell phone back. Spell component pouches might be exactly the same way. Like, no, we're not going to steal it from you. We just leave your staff and your spell components here, and when you're done, come get it. Tynes Dungeon? Tynus Dungeon? I know you've been here before, and I'm going to butcher the name. Sorry about that. It says most of the time it can be traced. Most of the time it can be traced. It says so in the spell description. See, yeah, and having fun with that might be pretty interesting. Like, for example, what happens when the PCs think they're being investigated, but there's actually someone else investigating another incident, and the players just happen to be crossing a thing. Like the player characters come to town and there are magical investigators investigating, like the PCs see like blast marks against the wall, and there's like sludge on the ground, and there's like some weird monster that was like hacked up and twisted, and everyone's like, oh, what happened here? And the PCs are like, oh shit, something else happened before we got here. Damn it, they're going to be on high alert now, right? I would play it like that. Why not? Things happen. Many things happen out of the sight of player characters, and what a great way to make the world alive and immersed. That there are other people committing crimes, like the proverbial bad boys. What you going to do with like wizards up against young apprentices up against the wall because they're like a gang, because they finally learned how to cast like shocking grasp, chill touch, and burning hands or something, and they're up against the wall, and there's like magical police, law enforcement like patting them down and stuff like that. I think that'd be kind of cool. Zamar says, I think I will use it to enhance my next town. Okay, I made a town that is actually run by decent mages. All right, it makes sense that they would outlaw and confiscate odd items that are spell components. And listen, who knows? This might just simply be a conversation. Hey, we are the law enforcers. We just want to talk to you. We want to know who you are and why you're here. When you, I'm a man of a certain age. My wife and I, we like to go cruising. We haven't been in like 2 years. We have a cruise set up. It's been on hold forever for the logical reasons today, right? But they might go, okay, why are you coming into town? Are you bringing in fruits and vegetables? You know, those kind of questions, right? Oh, is that your familiar? Your familiar is going to have to hang out in our little zoo region over there. What? Yeah, your frog, bat, winged serpent, whatever the case might be. Yeah, your familiar is going to hang out with the other familiars because they get in too much trouble. That'd be kind of cool. Although you could have a like dog shows and cat shows. They could have familiar shows. That's a different thing. Mike Gould says those who cast spells might need to manifest a mark or symbol or be associated with an array of colors. Detect magic might reveal these. Exactly. Like a player for just a random reason. Maybe you just introduced this on the fly. Player character shows up, goes to town. Players like, I'm a decent person. I'm going to abide by all the laws. They go, okay, just a moment. A proctor comes up, maybe with a certain, like a medallion. I mean, a periapt on their forehead or a rod or something, and then all of a sudden, a, a, a certain symbol appears on the back of their hand or on their forehead or appears in the air, and that person goes, "You've got the mark of the the Galishar," or something like that. And they're like, "The Galishar? What do you mean? You have the mark of the Galishar. They are ones who cast spells of cold and blight." And they're like, "Well, I have a spell or two like that. Yeah, we can't let you come into town." And like, "Well, I haven't done anything wrong." Like, "No, but you're associated with beings that have done a lot of harm to our town. Why don't you come with us? Maybe if you give us information about them, we'll let you run freely in town," right? Like, you could have this doesn't have to be on or off. This could be a conversation that's happening. Where are you from? What is your purpose here? Who have you seen that did these things, right? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at you guys having a private conversation. Like, yep. Yeah. Like Dead Man says, oops. Sorry, I'm going back to a comment. I skipped over it, so I apologize for that. Zamar says, "Can I get a Big Mac with with my rifle? Extra large fries?" Yeah, there's some places that are kind of like that here. Not as It's not as bad as people who don't live in the states think it is, but it can be pretty shocking when you go into like a sporting goods place in the Midwest and the top floor is nothing but like guns and rifles and crossbows and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah. Deadman says fire would be very bad in an elven city. I think anywhere. Yeah, I think anywhere like Zamara is saying, like in a dwarven cave or something. Fire is pretty bad. Period. So yeah, yes, yeah. Fireball in a small space is terrible. Tynes Dungeon says in Michigan, Upper Peninsula, you can rent a gun. Oh yeah, oh yeah. We could have a whole listen. We could do a week of like compare and contrast because it. Listen, it's completely for those of you who tune into the channel and you're not in the states at all. Even here in the states, big city versus small city versus rural area, completely different. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, East Coast, big city, multiples of millions of people living together, completely different mentality, rules, usage, cultural impact of firearms versus small towns. Completely different. Same laws, the laws are the same, but the social interaction of those things completely different. Completely different. Like some places in a big city, if you have a concealed firearm, period, for any reason, it is, and you know, depending on the skin tone, it is going to be literally like high alert, get the fuck down. You know, what are you doing with that firearm? Literally, you can travel 100 miles, less than a day, an hour away out of a city, and having a concealed firearm, it's like if you didn't have one, there's something wrong with you. Of course, you got a gun under the seat. That's where everybody puts their gun. You know, of course, on the weekends, everybody gets together and goes out to the field and like and has a cookout and they shoot and whatnot. Of course, there is. I mean, it's very much like that here in the States. So it's not equally everywhere. It's just complete depends on where you live, the population, the culture. It's just a whole different thing. Yeah. So Times Dungeon, yes. Places where you can rent guns. Oh yeah, absolutely. Shooting ranges and stuff. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Uh, Mike Marin says you can guarantee there would be a factional debate around spell and weapon control. Of course there would. Stubborn dwarves saying axes are part of our heritage. You can't separate a dwarf from his magic axe, etc. Hell's yes. Hell's yes. Could could you imagine like the paladins like confiscate my longsword? Okay, whatever. The dwarf is like, fuck that. No, you're not taking my axe. You know, I this was handed down 5 generations and blah blah blah. Right? Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. That would be used. Yeah, they. Zomar says I can see people abusing that logic. Yes, this is my father's dag I believe. Well, I'm going to call it a dagfer. This is my father's dagfer he used in the war to protect this city. Yeah, yeah. You know, people would abuse it because we always have people who abuse things. That's where laws come from. If we don't know, yeah, it's always some. There's always one who ruins it for everybody else. Uh, Times Dungeon says I live in the country. I live in a country, small outer town. Oh yeah, yeah, smaller town, more firearms, uh, which in turn can lead to quests for either faction later used. Yeah, a weapon later used to kill a noble. Now, and like I said, the one ruins it for everybody. If a king is killed by a spear, guaranteed you're going to see confiscation of spears, right? Or what I mean by that is not necessarily one to one, but if someone is mind controlled to do a thing that causes major damage, they're going to be looking for mind controllers. Maybe they don't care that you can cast a fireball. What they're looking for are infiltrators in the mind, or shape changers, or levitators, or what have you, right? Like, yeah. Oh man. Oh no. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. All right. Okay. Okay. So before I get out of here, Michael says face Gerald to the dwarf with silver mask and stuff like that. Then you and your ancestral axe can camp outside of town. You have 1 minute to comply. What a hilarious people who just didn't get RoboCop is so hilarious. That movie hilarious. You have 1 minute to comply. Drop your weapon. He drops the weapon. Is like, you have 30 seconds to comply. And like, stop the machine. All of a sudden, and the one dude that's the hanger on is like, oh, I guess there's an opening now. Like as if it was no big thing. Like dude just got shot with 50 cal guns in a boardroom. It's like, well, oh well, I guess there's an opening. Deadman says Philly peaked in the 1950s at 2.07 million people and is now at 1.58. Oh, that's because it's expensive as shit to live in big cities. People are leaving by the droves. Yeah, dude. Yeah, people were just like, I got to work. Why do I have to live in this expensive place? I could work from home, or at least work very far away from centralized areas. Let's see. Ty says, look at Hurricane Katrina. People were forced to turn over their guns, and many of them had guns passed down many generations. That is a real thing as well, where you have conflicting um, desires happening because of a third situation. So the people in Katrina had to hand over their guns because they didn't want people with firearms packed together who had to be saved, who had find shelter, and had to give them up because they're going to combine all these people. They're living on cots and whatnot because of a storm, but at the same time they're like, this wasn't a problem before. Why can't I have them now, right? And we say that because here in the States we love our individuality, And we say that, but again, one person always ruins it for everybody else. And it only takes one person to ruin it. And unfortunately, we live in an era where one person ruining it for everybody is not like one person ruining it for 10. It could be one person ruining it for 10,000, 100,000, 1 million, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. M Squared says sorcerers could also be ostracized given that they can't turn off their magic, yet more material to work with for generating quests. Of course. Like, why maybe a wizard's cabal is out to save sorcerers because they're being unfairly targeted. Like maybe wizards are on off switches. Like, hey, if I cast a produce flame spell, I'm giving off magic. You can detect where I'm at. The minute I turn it off, nothing. Right. Whereas a sorcerer might give off like a mutant, right? X-Men mutant. Maybe they constantly give off a signal that it's always on with them to a degree, and they can't control it. And of course, like X-Men and mutants, sorcerers might be feared because they can't control it. Like, maybe someone specifically does something like a vicious mockery to trigger a sorcerer and goes, see, they can't control themselves. That's why we have law enforcement. Lock them up. Put them in the anti-magic shell, right? Oh, man. Lastly, Zamara says, I will say this now. There is a town in Florida, Ebero, that I used in my Delta Green game, okay, has a modern-day population of less than 250 people. Blows my mind. Yeah. There's some small towns that are like if you sneeze, if you're driving through or you're passing through and you sneeze, you miss it. Yeah, it's crazy, but it's awesome too, right? Yeah, Ride Eternal, Shiny, and Prismatic Spray. Cuffed for illegal casting. Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. So I live Ebro. I live not far from it. See, small world after all. Hell, we could listen. We could go through. We could do a whole week nothing role playing. Just talk about like different regional differences and people that live in different countries and states. Sorry, Mike. America's hat, Canada, and America's pants, Mexico. I'm being completely sarcastic. Sorry about that, but you get the point, right? There's so many things that we could do to talk about, but of course tomorrow is Future Friday, so we're going to talk about science fiction. I'm not going to tell you how we're going to talk about what we have now, but just be aware we're probably going to talk about the Aliens franchise, and like the importation of unknown materials or viruses or living things and stuff. Maybe not magic, but psychic entities and aliens and policing, that kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about it. We might even talk about humans becoming our own aliens to ourselves. A little transhumanist kind of stuff in there. Anyway, guys, have a great one. Got to get out of here. You